Good morning, students. Today we will see the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is located between the two orbits and below the middle part of the anterior cranial fossa. It is divided into right and left halves by a midline nasal septum. The nasal cavity opens on the face by two nostrils or anterior nasal apertures, and it opens into the nasopharynx by two choanae or posterior nasal apertures. Here you can see in the blue color it is a nasal cavity. Below that in pink or rose color it is the oral cavity, and behind the nasal cavity and the oral cavity you can see the green colored part, that is the pharynx. You can see it is divided into nasopharynx and oropharynx and all. So this is how it is situated in the skull. Okay, here again it's a 3D depiction of nasal cavity. In the violet color you can see the nasal septum. So it is dividing the nasal cavity proper into two equal halves. Okay, you can see the anterior nares or the nostrils. Posterior you can see choana or the posterior aperture, and you can see that it is lying on the hard palate. It is just above the hard palate. Now we will just talk about the functional areas of the nasal cavity, and then we will go to detailed anatomy of the nasal cavity. So the functional area of the nasal cavity can be divided into a respiratory area and an olfactory area. The respiratory area is large and is covered with pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium and goblet cells supported by underlying lamina propria containing numerous nasal glands. So this nasal glands will be both serous and mucus, and there will be cavernous vascular plexus. What is the function of this respiratory area? It helps in warming and humidification of the inspired air. What does the mucus glands do? The mucus secretion of the nasal glands will trap the dust particles. Also, the respiratory mucosa covers major part of the lateral wall, septum, roof and floor. Now coming to the olfactory area. It covers the posterior-superior part of the lateral nasal wall, including the back of superior concha and sphenoethmoidal recess. We will talk about those terms later. Okay, and it will also cover the upper part of the nasal septum and the arching roof between the septum and the lateral wall. It is yellowish brown in color and is characterized by bipolar olfactory receptor cells. They form the first order neurons in the olfactory pathway. The axons of these receptor cells gather to form bundles of olfactory nerve which pierce the cribriform plate of the ethmoid to end in the olfactory bulb, and this olfactory mucosa is important for the sense of smell. Now we will come to the anatomy of nasal cavity. So we will see it in subdivisions. Okay. So we will first talk about nasal vestibule, and then we will talk about nasal cavity proper. The vestibule of nasal cavity forms the anteroinferior part of the nasal cavity. It is lined by skin and contains sweat glands, sebaceous glands and coarse hair called as vibrissae. The vestibule is bounded laterally by the major alar cartilage and medially by the septal process of the major alar cartilage. It is limited above and behind by Lehmann Nasi, which is a curved ridge on lateral wall of the nasal cavity, and it is bounded medially by columella, which is mobile. So here you can see on the anteroinferior part, okay, of the picture you can see Lehmann Nasi and nasal vestibule. Here you can see there is a vibrissae. Here you can see the alar cartilages, you can see columella. Again another picture from Cunningham, you can see the vibrissae, you can see the Lehmann Nasi. So this is how you can see the vestibule of nose from the inferior view. Now coming to the nasal cavity proper. The vertical or medial wall, which is also called as septal wall, will divide the nasal cavity into two halves, and also there is a lateral wall. So in this nasal cavity proper we will be dealing with the roof, floor, medial wall or nasal septum, and lateral wall. We will see each topic separately. The nasal cavity communicates with paranasal air sinuses. In addition, it shows following communications. They are the communication with anterior cranial fossa, that is by the foramina in cribriform plate of ethmoid bone, and by anterior ethmoidal canal with the anterior cranial fossa, occasionally by an emissary vein through foramen cecum connecting nasal veins to superior sagittal sinus, by sphenopalatine foramen with pterygopalatine fossa. The structures passing through the foramen are sphenopalatine artery, nasopalatine nerve, and superior nasal branches of sphenopalatine ganglion. By the incisive canal in the incisive fossa of hard palate to the oral cavity, the nasal branches of greater palatine artery and palatine branches of nasopalatine nerve passes through the incisive canal. And by nasolacrimal duct, which carry the tears with the lacrimal sac, and through it with the conjunctival sac. So these are the communications of nasal cavity. Now coming to the boundaries of nasal cavity proper. So as we have already said, each half has four walls. There is a roof, floor, medial wall or nasal septum, which is common for both halves, and it is partly bony and partly cartilaginous, and there is a lateral wall. So it is about each half. Coming to each boundary in detail, roof is the narrowest wall of nasal cavity. It lies at the junction of lateral and medial walls. It has an anterior sloping part, middle horizontal part, and posterior sloping part. So here in this picture you can see the anterior sloping part. The anterior sloping part is formed by the nasal cartilages, nasal bones, and nasal part of the frontal bone. So till that part it is a anterior sloping part. The middle horizontal part is formed by cribriform plate of ethmoid. So you can see that shaded in green. Okay. And the posterior sloping part is formed by the lower surface of the body of sphenoid. Now coming to the floor. The floor is formed by mucosa covering the superior surface of hard palate. So the superior surface of hard palate is composed of palatine process of maxilla anteriorly and horizontal process of palatine bone posteriorly. Here you can see that. Okay. Now coming to the medial wall or nasal septum. So this nasal septum, we have already said that it is partly bony and partly cartilaginous. The bony septum is mainly formed by perpendicular plate of ethmoid bone, which forms a posterior superior part of the septum, and by the vomer, which forms a posterior inferior part of the septum. There is a gap between two bony components anteriorly, that is bridged by septal cartilage. So we will come to that later. And the bony septum is covered with mucoperiosteum. Now coming to the cartilaginous nasal septum. It is formed mainly by septal cartilage, which bridges the anterior gap between the main bony components of the bony septum, that is the ethmoid bone and the vomer. And the cartilaginous septum is covered by mucoperichondrium. The lowest part of the nasal septum is called as columella, and it is a fibrofatty tissue covered with skin. It forms a medial wall of vestibule and is a mobile part of septum. So here we can see the bony part and the cartilaginous part. Posterior superiorly you can see perpendicular plate of ethmoid, posterior inferiorly you can see vomer, and the gap between them is bridged by septal cartilage. You can see columella. Okay. The posterior free margin of the nasal septum is formed by free margin of vomer, which separates the two posterior nasal apertures or choanae. The free margin of the septum can be inspected through the nasopharynx by a procedure called as posterior rhinoscopy. I will show the picture later. Now coming to the arterial supply of nasal septum. Nasal septum is supplied by anterior and posterior ethmoidal arteries, which are branches of the ophthalmic artery. The septal branches of superior labial artery, which is a branch of facial artery. The septal branches of sphenopalatine and greater palatine arteries, which are the branches of maxillary artery. So you can see an area marked in orange color. It is called as Kayselback area or Little's area. So that vascular plexus formed there. Okay. It is by the septal branches of the anterior ethmoidal, sphenopalatine, greater palatine and superior labial arteries and their corresponding veins. So this anastomotic plexus will form Kayselback's plexus. Injury to this plexus is the most common cause of epistaxis or nasal bleeding. So this nasal bleeding can occur even due to fingernail trauma. Okay. Other causes are hypertension, etc. So basically this is a vascular area in the anteroinferior part of the nasal septum and it is prone to bleeding. Most common cause for epistaxis is bleeding from this Little's area. Okay. So that is a part marked there. Now coming to the nerve supply of the nasal septum. So when you talk about the nerve supply, you should have a general idea about the nerve supply of the nasal cavity as such. Olfactory nerve is for the sense of smell. Then there are nerves for general sensation. Okay, nerves of general sensation are anterior ethmoidal nerve, which is from the nasociliary nerve, which is a branch of ophthalmic nerve. Then there are short nasal branches of sphenopalatine ganglion from maxillary nerve, nasopalatine nerve from sphenopalatine ganglion, that is also from the maxillary nerve. Anterior superior alveolar nerve from infraorbital branch of maxillary nerve. Greater palatine nerve from sphenopalatine ganglion, that is also from the maxillary nerve. So those are the nerves for general sensation, that is from ophthalmic nerve and maxillary nerve. Then there is autonomic nerve supply, that is brought about by the Vidian nerve or nerve of pterygoid canal. I will show you the picture later. So that is responsible for the autonomic nerve supply. And the postganglionic parasympathetic fibers will control the secretion of nasal glands, and sympathetic fibers from the ganglion supply the blood vessels. So we will come to the nerve supply of nasal septum. As we told earlier, olfactory nerve carries the sense of smell from olfactory area. Now the general sensations from the respiratory zone are carried by the following nerves. The posterior 3/4 of the septum is supplied by nasopalatine nerve and medial group of superior nasal branches of sphenopalatine ganglion. The nasopalatine nerve produces a groove on the septum as it travels downwards and forwards, giving branches to the septum. The internal nasal branches of anterior ethmoidal nerve supply the upper anterior part of the septum. The nasal branches of the anterior superior alveolar nerve supply the antero-inferior part of the septum and the skin of the vestibule. Now we will come to the lateral wall of the nasal septum. The lateral wall of the nasal cavity is divided into three areas. Anterior part, it presents vestibule, it is lined by skin and it has vibrissae. Then there is atrium of middle meatus. It is posterior-superior to the vestibule. A mucocutaneous junction between the vestibule and the atrium is known as a Lehmann Nasse. The upper limit of atrium is called as Agar Nasse. So we have seen Lehmann Nasse, vestibule and all earlier itself. Okay. Now the posterior part. So there is an anterior part, atrium of middle meatus, and there is a posterior part. The posterior part of the lateral wall is characterized by concave or turbinates and meatus. Okay, so you will have concave or turbinates and meatuses in the posterior part of the lateral wall. What are concave? They are shelf-like bony elevations, and the meatuses are the spaces beneath the overhanging concave. So here you can see the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. In the anterior part you can see the vestibule. Above that you can see the mucocutaneous junction, which is a Lehmann Nasse, and the upper limit of the atrium is called as the Agar Nasse. So between the Agar Nasse and the Lehmann Nasse you can see the atrium of the middle meatus, and posterior to that you can see the posterior part of the lateral wall, which is composed of concha and meatuses. Meatuses we will see. So you can actually see it in this. The superior meatus is between the superior concha and middle concha. Middle meatus is between middle and inferior concha, and inferior meatus is below the inferior concha. Okay. Nasal concave, they are also called as turbinates. They are shelf-like bony elevations, and they are curved and directed inframedially from the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. From above downwards, you have already seen that in the diagram. There is a superior concha. It is the smallest and is located in the posterior part of the nasal cavity. It is a projection from the ethmoid bone. Middle concha is between the superior and inferior concha, and it is also a projection from the ethmoid bone. Whereas the inferior concha is an independent bone and is largest among the concave. It is composed of only spongy bone. So here again you can see here it is marked turbinates. Turbinate is another name for concha. The plural of concha is conchae. Now coming to the meatuses. There are three meatuses: superior meatus, middle meatus and inferior meatus. And in addition to above three meatus, the lateral wall is characterized by a fourth space called as sphenoethmoidal recess above the superior concha. The sphenoethmoidal recess lies above and behind the superior concha, and sphenoidal sinus opens into it. The superior meatus is the space between superior and middle conchae. It is limited to only the posterior third of the lateral wall, and posterior ethmoidal sinus opens into it. So, you should know which all sinus opens into which all meatuses or recesses. Okay, that is important. So, to the superior meatus, posterior ethmoid sinus opens. Now, coming to the middle meatus is the space between middle and inferior conchae. It receives opening of four paranasal sinuses, namely middle ethmoidal, anterior ethmoidal, frontal and maxillary. There are certain salient features of the middle meatus. They are the bulla ethmoidalis, hiatus semilunaris, ostium or maxillary hiatus, infundibulum, so in this picture you can see bulla ethmoidalis or ethmoidal bulla. So, here it is marked as ethmoidal bulla. It is a rounded bulge produced by the middle ethmoidal sinus which opens on or above the bulla. The hiatus semilunaris, you can see below the ethmoidal bulla. It is a curved cleft below and in front of the bulla ethmoidalis. The opening of the maxillary air sinus is located posteriorly in the hiatus semilunaris below the bulla ethmoidalis. Okay, you can see that it is marked there. Maxillary sinus opening posteriorly. The infundibulum is a duct-like passage beginning at the anterior end of the hiatus. The frontal sinus opens into the infundibulum by frontonasal duct, and anterior ethmoidal sinus opens at the anterior end of the middle meatus. Now coming to the inferior meatus. Inferior meatus lies below the inferior concha. It is the largest meatus. It receives the opening of the nasolacrimal duct in the anterior part. The mucous membrane at this orifice is usually raised to form a lacrimal fold which acts as a valve. It is called as valve of Hasner, preventing air and nasal secretions being sucked into the duct. The inferior meatus provides an approach for draining out the pus from the maxillary sinus. Now coming to the arterial supply of the lateral wall. The lateral wall also receives blood from the same sources like that of the nasal septum, except that instead of the septal branches of the superior labial branch of facial artery, alar twigs from the lateral nasal branch of facial artery supply the lateral wall. That is the only difference. Now coming to the nerve supply of the lateral wall. Again, the olfactory zone, the receptor cells in the olfactory zone are supplied by olfactory nerve. General sensation from the respiratory zone are carried by following nerves. Lateral group of posterior superior nasal branches from the sphenopalatine ganglion in the posterior-superior area. In the posterior inferior area, it is supplied by nasal branches of greater palatine nerve. The internal nasal branches of the anterior ethmoidal nerve in the anterior superior area, and nasal branches of anterior superior alveolar nerve in the antero-inferior area. So we talked about a Vidian nerve when we talked about the general plan of nerve supply of nasal cavity. The Vidian nerve is also called as nerve of pterygoid canal and is formed by greater petrosal nerve and deep petrosal nerve, which passes from the foramen lacerum to the pterygopalatine fossa through the pterygoid canal. So it is also called as nerve of pterygoid canal. Now coming to the embryology of nasal cavity. So already the development of phase is finished, right? So you might be familiar with the terms used here. So the development of nasal cavity is from the olfactory or nasal placodes, and it takes place side by side with the development of face and palate. The olfactory placodes are the ectodermal depressions in the frontonasal process. They sink from the surface to form nasal pits. The medial nasal process is a part of frontonasal process between two placodes, thins out to form the nasal septum. And nasal pits on either side form the halves of the nasal cavity. So that is how the nasal cavity is formed. Coming to the clinical anatomy. So we have already familiarized with the term posterior rhinoscopy. So the procedure, how we will do the posterior rhinoscopy is that the patient sits facing the examiner. Okay, he opens his mouth and the examiner depresses the tongue with a tongue depressor. Then the posterior rhinoscopic mirror is introduced. The mirror is held like a pen and is carried behind the soft palate. So you can see which all structures you can visualize through posterior rhinoscopy. You can see any abnormality in the choanae. Okay, so you can see the posterior nasal aperture. You can see the turbinates. You can see if there is any abnormality in the turbinates. You can see whether if there is any discharge from the meatus, especially the middle meatus. Okay, so if there is a discharge in the middle meatus, it is seen in the infection of maxillary, frontal or ethmoidal sinuses. And if the discharge is above the middle turbinate, it indicates the infection of the posterior ethmoid or sphenoid sinuses. So that is the use of posterior rhinoscopy. Now coming to the clinical anatomy of the nasal septum. The nasal septum can undergo fractures. If there is blows from the front, it results in fracture of the nasal septum. They are called as Jarjave fractures. If the blow is from below, it will result in Chevalier fracture. You just have to know that nasal septum can undergo fractures. Okay. Then coming to the deviated nasal septum. So we already know that both nasal cavity are not symmetric, but still the nasal septum will be, the normal nasal septum won't be deviated. Okay, so if there is any deviation there is any change in the shape of the nasal septum towards it can be either to right side or to the left side. So that is called as deviated nasal septum. So this is the anterior view. Okay, you have cut through the nose to see the nasal septum, and the second part is the after septoplasty or the repair of the nasal deviated nasal septum. So here is the inferior view showing deviated nasal septum. The first, the picture above shows a deviated nasal septum to the right, and the second half of the first picture shows the nasal septum after septoplasty. In the picture below, you can see it is deviated to the left, and the second half shows the corrected nasal septum. The other pathologies which can occur in the nasal septum are the septal hematoma, septal abscess, perforation of nasal septum, etc. So you should know about the deviated nasal septum. Deviated nasal septum is very important. Then rhinitis, the common cold. Okay, it can be caused by viral or bacterial, or it can be irritative. Then there is chronic rhinitis. Okay, that is the cold, the rhinitis has been persistent for like long time. There can be granulomatous disease. You don't have to go into the details of that. Then there is sinusitis. Sinusitis is the inflammation of the sinuses. You have to know about the position of the maxillary ostium. It is in a lower level than that of the frontal sinus. So if there is frontal sinusitis, since the maxillary sinus is in a lower level, okay, the fluid from the frontal sinus can flow into the maxillary sinus, and the maxillary sinus will be filled, but the sinusitis will be in the frontal sinus. Okay, we already talked about the Vidian nerve or the nerve of pterygoid canal. It is also called as nerve of hay fever. Allergic rhinitis is also called as hay fever. Okay, so it is characterized by lacrimation and excessive secretion of nasal glands due to the irritation of the Vidian nerve. So if there is uncontrollable secretion, you can actually go for surgical section of the Vidian nerve. Then there can be foreign bodies, rhinolith, nasal myiasis. Nasal myiasis is maggots in the nose. Formation of adhesion between the nasal septum and turbinates by scar tissue because of injury, because of intranasal operation or severe infections. Okay, so that is called as nasal synechiae. So it's basically an adhesion between the medial and lateral wall of nasal polyps. Nasal polyps are non-neoplastic lesions arising from the nasal mucosa. Okay. Choanal atresia is a congenital disorder in which the choana is blocked due to abnormal bony tissue or soft tissue. Okay. CSF rhinorrhea is the leakage of CSF into the nose. Okay, so it can be a clear fluid, that is it can be just the CSF, or it can be mixed with blood. If it is mixed with blood, it usually is a result of acute head injuries. So the site of leakage can be through the cribriform plate. So the CSF from the anterior cranial fossa will reach the nasal cavity through the cribriform plate, roof of ethmoid air cells, frontal sinus. Okay, and also, so this occurs in fractures. Okay, So in fracture of temporal bone, the CSF reaches the middle ear. It will first reach the middle ear and then escapes through the eustachian tube into the nose. Then it is called as CSF otorhinorrhea. Here it is given pseudorhinolicoria, but okay. So it is CSF otorhinorrhea. So basically it is from the middle ear and then to the nasal cavity, and it will come out through the nose. So that is CSF rhinorrhea. So you just have to know about there is a condition called as CSF rhinorrhea and the common sites for CSF leak. Now coming to the epistaxis, the bleeding from inside the nose is called as epistaxis. It is common in all age group. Okay, it can be seen in adult, children, older people. So it often represents as an emergency. So basically, epistaxis is a sign and not a disease as such. Okay, so you have to know from which all sides the nose can bleed. So it can be from the Little's area, which we have already seen. Then it can be from the retrocolumella vein. Okay, it is a vertical vein behind the columella. So it is a common site of venous bleeding in young people. Then there can be bleeding from the Woodruff's plexus. It is a plexus of vein situated in the it is situated inferior to the posterior end of inferior turbinate. It is a site for posterior epistaxis in adults. So when the patient presents to you, or you incidentally see a patient with bleeding from the nose, you have to know the most common site for bleeding from the nose is in the Little's area. So you can actually control this by pinching the nose with thumb and index finger for about 5 minutes. So this will compress the vessels of the Little's area. Okay. Then you can apply cold compression, which will result in reflex vasoconstriction and thus stops the bleeding. In Trotter's method, the patient is made to sit leaning a little forward over a basin to spit any blood and breathe quietly from the mouth. And also you can the main treatment is by nasal packing, we can or cauterization. Okay, and there are certain surgical methods also if it can't be stopped by all those methods. So that's all about the clinical anatomy of the nasal cavity. So you have coming to the clinical anatomy, you should know about deviated nasal septum. Then you should know about CSF rhinorrhea and epistaxis mainly. Okay. So I hope it's clear. Thank you and have a nice day.